and welcome everybody. I'm going to get started, and people are still trickling in, but they can trickle in as we go along. But hello, welcome. My name is Anna Bryce, and I am the VP of Programming here at the AMA Phoenix, and we're thrilled to have you with us. And we are even more thrilled to have Rami Kalla with us from Point in Time Studios. And Rami has been a huge supporter of the AMA Phoenix, so we're thrilled to have him. But real quick housekeeping things we want to get aside now is I want to thank our AMA sponsors. Without our sponsors, they are just so supportive of us. I do want to particularly point out Taylor Wellman from Financial Potion, who is our host. And she does a lot of things, including things like this, like hosting online meetings. She's going to be the host of our Spectrum Awards. So please, if you need to reach out to Taylor for anything, address, and I can always connect you. And I also want to point out Point in Time Studios, because they have been a sponsor of ours for quite a while. Rami Kalla and his team always produce our Spectrum video for us every year. And this has been going on for quite a while. And like I said, he's been a big supporter of ours and friend of ours for quite a while. And I think I really just want to jump into introducing Rami. And, oh, okay, I thought we got rid of this slide, but we'll keep it. And we want to thank our supporters. These are the companies that employ our board members. And we have really hardworking board members, and they only are able to do this because they have the support of their companies. So we do thank them. And now I will get right into introducing Rami. He is the president of Point in Time Studios here in Tempe, Arizona. And he has been a member of the AMA for quite a number of years. As I mentioned, he has been our video company at the AMA Spectrum Awards for several years in a row now. And we thank him so much for taking this on year after year. We've had him speak before, and again, this is a topic that he is an expert on, is XR and immersive marketing. And XR meaning both virtual and augmented reality. And this is something all of us as marketers need to know about, and what new things we could be doing for our company. So I'm going to let Rami just jump right into it. Rami, welcome, and thank you once again.
Thank you, Anna. I really appreciate the warm introduction. Let me just say it's been a pleasure to be a sponsor of the AMA for so many years and be able to support this awesome organization and have the opportunity to speak and help provide some value. So it really is a lot of fun, and I really enjoy it. Can't wait to do this in person, hopefully soon, but hopefully you guys enjoy this just as much. We try to make a kind of fun little, studio-esque background here for you. So hopefully you enjoy it. Awesome. So I'm going to reshare my screen here. Give me just one moment. We'll get her back live again. All right. Screen sharing has failed. I guess it's not letting me screen share.
You should be good to go. Go ahead and give it a shot again.
Okay. Failed to start. Please try again. Give me just a minute.
Oh, technology. Don't you love it? It just worked during the tech check, and then once it's showtime, it gets nervous. And then
that's
stops working, and the gremlins take over.
Welcome to my world.
Yeah.
All right, there we go.
There you are. You're on now.
Perfect. Okay. How's the gray box there?
Yeah, just kind of move it, so it won't be in the way of your slides. That's perfect right there.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, as Anna said, the presentation today is going to be on XR, immersive marketing and beyond. What is XR? We're going to take some time to talk about XR, which encompasses virtual and augmented reality. We're going to also take you into some statistics on what's happening in the field. Obviously, COVID had a large effect on it. We're going to talk about that. We're going to also take you through some different devices available through VR and augmented reality. And they're going to show you some case studies as well. So hopefully, through this journey, the next 40, 45 minutes, you'll get some information, learn a few things, and then we'll open up for questions at the end. Also co-hosting with me is my business development representative, Randall Crockett. Randall's an expert. He comes from an awesome AR background, as well as a lot of experience in VR. So he's going to be co-hosting with me throughout the presentation and jumping in for questions and answers too. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, there we go. So for a moment before we go, I want you to think about for a second. I want you to close your eyes. Imagine you're sitting on your sofa in your room. You put on your glasses, and all of a sudden, this whole world comes to life in front of you. You're able to watch a movie. You're taken away to Hawaii. You're on the beach in Maui. You're back walking with the dinosaurs. You're surfing the web. Maybe you're calling a family member. All of these things happening in this augmented reality world. That might sound like science fiction, Star Trek, but honestly, we're really not that far from that. We're going to talk about some things that are happening, and these things are coming. A lot of them are already here in the reality I just spoke about. And we're going to go a little step further and have a little more fun with it, but all these things are coming to light. So some really exciting stuff. I like to open with a few videos. Obviously, we're a multimedia company, so we've got to have some videos. I'm going to share with you this one that Microsoft put out on their HoloLens. I think you'll enjoy it. So hopefully this will play well for you and come through on audio.
Sorry, Penny. This may be a bad time, but the client is on an earlier flight.
We're so not ready.
Should we start to panic?
Not yet. Just bring the team in, please.
I can see you're hard at work, Samir, but Penny needs your help.
Yeah, sure thing. Just let me check out this bunker real quick.
Samir, the client is on...
As per usual, your sense of timing is just awesome.
Kai-san, Pennyが呼んでいますけど。
今すぐ行くって伝えて。Penny?
Hey. Cute.
I try.
So, how it's coming?
It's not. This is the flagship store. It's gotta be unforgettable.
Yeah, not exactly blowing my hair back.
Yeah, the space is driving me nuts.
All right, how about a change of scenery?
Welcome to Think Club.
Some inspiration, please.
Namaste.
Wait.
Inspiration comes from the most unfamiliar places. I meet you, you are now me. Information sent, now lay down your heart of aces. What will be, will just be. Chicken little and I will go back to the place where we went slow.
Mata ギリギリなのね。Impressive.
That went well.
Hopefully you enjoyed that. That was a fun video put out by Microsoft on their HoloLens AR headset. And as you can see, when this came out, it was like, this is so far out into the future. Well, it's not. A lot of these things are already happening. Companies have already been using the HoloLens for applications similar to this. So I always enjoy that video. So let's go back to full screen. Okay. Hopefully the audio and everything came through okay on that. So let's talk about XR. What is XR? So XR was a term that was used really as an umbrella term because people were saying mixed reality, virtual reality, augmented reality. We really needed a term that defined all of that immersive media. So the industry came out with the term XR. XR, the two big players, of course, are virtual and augmented reality. As you see here on the screen, we have a definition of what VR is. But for those of you that don't know, really what VR is, it's a fully immersive environment. So you are taken away, it's completely CGI, and you are immersed in it. That means you cannot see the real world around you. You are in that space. So give you an example. I was, during COVID, I needed to unwind. I was a little stressed, as we all were. So I put on my Oculus Quest 2, and I was taken away, fully immersed to the Australian coast. I was on the beach in Australia, sitting on the beach in the sand, enjoying the waves coming in. And I love to use virtual reality for those scenarios where I want to be completely taken away. So that's a good example of VR. Augmented reality is a little bit different. So in the sense that AR, it actually takes 3D environments and puts them into the real world. So you're actually seeing everything around you. I'm standing right now in our office, but think of like Pokemon Go as a good example. A Pokemon would land right in front of me. Now, mixed reality is a step up from that. I can actually poke the Pokemon and he'd giggle, and that would be an example of mixed reality. So under that umbrella of AR is basically taking the 3D world and inserting into the real world. And just to be clear, when I was in Australia, that was a 360 environment, fully immersive, versus a lot of things that we do are CGI, fully immersive VR. So there's a little distinction there, which we'll talk about some more. Now, who's in the game? This was really a game changer. What we saw was when HTC, Facebook really started doubling down and putting money into it. What I tell people is VR is not new. I mean, you can go back to the Air Force simulation training. That's VR. They're basically working and training in simulation. You want to go back even further to the caveman era, they had cave drawings and panoramics. Again, that's an example of a 360 panoramic environment being fully immersed into a scene. So it's been around for a very long time, but the technology is finally caught up. And because of the investment that's being put into it, we're able to see a huge explosion. And in a minute, we're going to have Randall's going to talk about really COVID and how that pushed things along, obviously with all of us working from home and needing to have a virtual solution to be able to do the things that we normally do. Again, here's that Pokemon Go example. I know this one's a little bit older, but I love it because it really was the first time that we saw AR jump on the scene, and in a big way. People saw Pokemon Go. I remember I'm at work with my employees and they're like, hey, I got to take my break. I got to catch some Pokemons. I'm like, well, what are you talking? What are you doing? But people love this, and they gamified it, and you're getting exercise. That wasn't a bad thing. Definitely some people got very obsessed with it. You see the numbers were huge, but this was a great example of AR really jumped on the scene in a big way. I love this ominous warning because I use this a lot when I'm talking to customers and to others. And I say, if you can hear it, taste it, touch it, smell it, see it, how does your brain not know it's not real, right? I mean, think about a dream that you're in, right? And you're running, your heart's racing. Your mind doesn't know the difference. Your mind thinks that you're actually racing. Your heart increases. You might be sweating a little bit. You wake up and you're like, oh, I was just running. Well, your mind doesn't know. And if you can trick all the senses to believe that you're doing something, it's hard to tell the difference between reality and fantasy. And there are some conspiracy theorists that believe we're already in a matrix and all of this is all virtual reality. I won't get into that, but there's a lot of fun rabbit holes you can go down with how you can trick the mind into putting into a virtual world. This is a fun example. Hopefully most of you have seen, I'm sure, The Matrix. If you haven't seen Ready Player One, this was Steven Spielberg's movie that came out a couple years ago. A great example of people living in a dystopian environment that wanted to escape through virtual reality. And you could live in these other worlds as an avatar and have this better life than you could have in reality. So it's a really cool example of how virtual reality was used in this film to better people's lives in a lot of ways. But as you can see, became an obsession for others. So a great film. If you haven't seen it, definitely watch it. And again, I always say, is life imitating art, or is it the other way around? I mean, stuff that we saw in The Matrix is coming true. And this was, almost 15 plus years ago. One of the areas that I always talk about that I think is really important is education. We do a lot of stuff in training and real estate, but education is another big realm, as well as healthcare. But I love this one because, as a kid, you're reading about dinosaurs or reading about the Declaration of Independence. How cool would it be to actually go there, to be able to put yourself back in those scenarios, those scenes, and be with the dinosaurs. So as you're talking about it, it's not just somebody at a board lecturing to you, you're there. So that's a next level generation. We're already seeing that ASU is adopting programs. They actually have a biology lab that's in VR. They're implementing some new virtual reality programs. ASU is really ahead of its time. We work a lot with Thunderbird as well, who's implementing VR and AR in their program. So there's a lot of schools that are already implementing this. And this is something we've been looking at, for a couple of years and said, this is going to be another really great avenue. So I mentioned earlier, Randall Crockett, who is our VP of Business Development, he's going to I'm going to kick it over to him for a minute. He's going to talk about the impact that COVID had on AR and VR. Randall.
You're on mute, Randall.
Yep, just looking for the mute button. There we go. Found it. Hi, everybody. Yeah, so what we saw at the beginning of this COVID, actually, so at the beginning of when this period happened, I was actually working with another company, helping them out with some stuff as well regarding virtual worlds and virtual spaces. What was interesting to see was as we began to progress into this without any effort on our part at all, it just suddenly exploded since COVID happened because people couldn't meet in person anymore. I mean, we all know what that took. We saw a huge impact in the education market in particular, but we also saw a huge impact in all other markets as well. Travel, tourism, being able to go visit large real estate projects, being able to go out and do tours of facilities, things of that nature, suddenly stopped overnight. And so we saw everything take off in all directions because of COVID. The interesting thing is the impact from that will last forever. People found a new way to do things. They suddenly saw that they don't need to travel halfway across the country to tour a facility. You don't have to go through to do a car show. You don't have to travel to New York or Chicago. You can simply watch it from your living room and just like you're there. So what we saw was a huge change in how people do things. And we're going to see that change, according to at least most experts, and I follow that, I agree with that as well, is that we will see this impact continue forward. Here we are sitting here today on a Zoom call, yet most of us are probably vaccinated, and most of us probably could meet in person according to the CDC guidelines, but it's just easier to do this way. You aren't disrupting your life as much. And so people have seen the convenience of this, and this COVID impact is probably going to change, as many people have said, change how we do things for many years to come. The accelerated growth rate they're looking at roughly 35% specifically from this through 2019. So we're seeing a fairly large growth. Right now, the entire market is around $7.5 billion. They're predicting that within that same amount of time period between now and 2026 is the actual target here. It doesn't show on this. 2026, we're probably going to see that market hit $125.19 billion. This includes hardware devices, and it also includes the application development themselves. So we can move on to the next one there if you want. Rami, next slide.
Yep.
There we go. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Yeah. So over here, what we're seeing here is our total statistics. I'm not going to read this to you. We're probably going to make this deck available to you if you wanted to take a look at it. Is that correct, Rami? I assume.
Correct. Yep. We'll have it available at the end. Yep.
Yeah. So I won't go through too much detail on this, but as you can see right here, I'll just kind of roughly go over some quick figures. On the very first column, it shows that the market was expected. We did this toward the end of the year. Last year hadn't actually been completely written out yet, this slide. They expected to hit $6.32 billion. That target was achieved. But we're seeing, like I said, we're seeing a huge growth in this right now, particularly coming from two primary sectors. They kind of overlap, and that's in the education market. One is that overall education has moved in this direction because of just scholastic problems, people's teachers unions, whatever the case may be. But we've also seen this in corporate training. We've seen a lot of situations now where factory workers, corporate tours. One example we talked to was a school located in the South that does a lot of work with a factory in Argentina. It's a metals factory, and the steel industry just isn't as sexy as other industries. And so trying to get engineers recruited to go work in a steel factory was rather difficult for them because the perception of a steel factory is still an old style steel factory. Modern steel factories are nothing like that, and modern steel technology is nothing like that. So what they were able to do was be able to set up a VR experience so that students in the South at this one university could attend and go down and take tours of this metals facility and see what a modern metals facility actually looks like. So we'll see the consumption, we'll see the changes, and we'll see the devices growing quite a bit here over the next few years. You go to the next slide there. Next slide. Oh, there you go. Okay, so this again just shows you overall the headset types. There's two different markets we look at when we look at VR and AR. One is we look at the headset market. Two is we look at the application market. And both of those are really driving the consumer experience. The AR VR market, which is slowly starting to converge and change quite a bit. Cost of these devices are gone way down. The use of those devices has gone way up, and they're also now cross-referencing between AR and VR on many of these devices. And so we're going to see a change in this area, and it's going to move out from gaming, which is really where most of the market is, especially in the VR right now. We're going to start seeing that growing significantly. And as you can see from this chart on the right-hand side, the VR AR differences in the colors, the AR being gray area, that will change a lot, and it will change in particular. My feeling is these numbers here are not accurate. I think that AR is actually going to grow even more so, because what they haven't taken into consideration is what 5G is going to do for AR. With the mobile capacity that we're going to be looking at in the future, we're going to be able to do client-side rendering, which means, or server-side rendering, which means you'll be able to look at extremely complex scenes through very lightweight glasses, because everything's rendering within the 5G network itself. So it doesn't have to depend on the device anymore. So we're going to see a significant change in those two areas, making it much easier for consumers to grab the content that they need and to be able to see anything they want to see without being restricted to their device. So we're going to go to the next slide there. Next, Rami. Well, I guess I'm just getting a little lag.
There's a lag, sorry.
Yeah, so you want to go to your brands?
Yes. So we talked about earlier, this is just a snapshot of some of the brands that we spoke about, and just a little bit deeper that are investing into VR. So again, a lot of people are putting their money where their mouth is, and they really see that this is the future of interactive media. So really exciting stuff. And thank you, Randall, for going through the statistics. And again, for us, and we'll talk about some more, COVID really impacted us. Obviously, we were already heavily invested into VR, and we had clients that, we do a lot in real estate that needed to be able to do tours around the country. So I sent our team out from LA to New York, and we were doing a lot of virtual tours for real estate because their leasing offices had closed, but people still needed a place to live. They needed a way to shop online. So we created a lot of online experiences where people could go on and still tour their apartments or possible homes and purchase online. So that was a really big area for us. And people, once they did that, realized, well, I can now tour 100 properties online. I could save so much time versus having to fly and drive to go see these in person. So like Randall said, I think a lot of human behavior has changed because of COVID, that people are not going to go back to some of the ways that they did before, especially the younger generation. The older generation still likes, hey, I want to touch it, I want to see it in person. But a lot of people are realizing, hey, there's a better way to do this. So I'm going to show you this other fun example of how to use VR. This is Lipton created this fun little video. Hopefully you can hear it okay. And so you can see I can click around on the desktop and move around inside the T. So those of you who are wondering what it looks like inside your teacup, there you go. There you are drinking your tea. we did actually something similar for NXP. They're the 5th largest semiconductor company in the world. And they came to us and said, we're coming with a new 5G semiconductor. We want to actually do something cool that can be at their trade shows rather than handing out pins and chocolates. So we basically create an experience similar to this one, but we take you inside the chip as it's firing off. And everything is built to spec. So approved by their engineers, but you're in there and it looks like Tron. But when you first put the headset on, it looks like you're in a city and everything's firing up and you can actually go through this 5G semiconductor chip like you're actually there. You're down to Ant-Man size. So just a very fun out of the box things that we've done, very similar to that. BMW has a driving experience. Again, very similar, where I was looking for an Audi R8. I wanted to just, play around. I get to put the headset on and you're inside the car and you're driving. BMW is the same thing. You can drag race inside a BMW with the headset on or from your desktop, and you feel like you're actually there inside the race. So just some really cool experiences that automotive companies are getting into or have been doing. Another exciting one, Cadillac. Cadillac created virtual showrooms. People could actually test drive their cars. So it was looking at how do we eliminate the whole showroom idea and be able to people to do that virtually. So allowing them to do that virtually. So a lot of ways that we can go into how it'll change our lives. Obviously we're doing this meeting like Randall said over Zoom. We really foresee augmented reality being where you're going to have holograms in a conference room. People aren't going to have to travel over the world. Not great for the airline department business, but people will be able to have meetings and have the holograms. Think like Star Trek and the holodeck and be able to have all that in one space. So just another example of how that could change. VR has been used for seniors to help them to practice so they don't fall. Walking, also we've seen it used for football players to help them throw more accurately. So again, just a ton of applications. And here's just sort of a larger list from education to medicine, sports. My wife's in cardiology, and we've seen AR being used to work on baby hearts because they're so small and you can make so many mistakes. We've seen it where you can actually practice in VR operating on the hearts before you do the surgery, and they've had a 99% increase in the success rate in the surgery. So again, an awesome example of how VR is already being used in the medical field. So we'll jump into a few of the things that we've done. So here's an example. We've been working actively with Axon Taser, and we're doing full 360, what they are 360 3D immersive training for them, for police officers. We actually put you in a domestic violence situation. So you're in that situation and there's all these things happening and you have to basically choose your own adventure. So you think of kind of like a tree branch and you're picking the right things. And if you pick the right things, everything turns out great. If you don't, it doesn't. But it's a really, really cool application that we can then roll out to the police force to give them this training that normally be done in person. They can all do it with the VR headset. So that's something we've been working on and we've had huge success with it already. So it's been really, really awesome. Another really fun case study. This is a project that we did pre-COVID. This is actually in Spain. The client had called us and said, I have this property that I just purchased. We're doing a full renovation. It's luxury 500 unit condos in Spain. And they wanted to show off how incredible the renovation is going to be, but it wasn't done yet. And they had to pre-sell these condos. So what we did is we recreated the whole thing in virtual reality. So you could actually stand in your villa on the rooftop and see the whole Mediterranean Sea below you. We took this program, we took this whole experience to London to a home show. So people in London could come to the show and purchase property. We were the only ones, excuse me, we were the only ones doing this. And the booth had a line around us because people want to put the VR headset on. What was really cool was people were signing up to purchase villas right then and there without going to Spain. They did over 30 deals in one weekend, which was 10 million in sales, and then doubled it the next weekend. So we right then saw some very direct ROI from virtual reality, which was really, really awesome. And then lastly, this is an example of what we're doing to gamify. So we have clients, especially in the housing sector, where they will have to make it fun, make the leasing fun. So even pre-COVID, we were finding ways, how could we gamify the leasing experience? So we do that by actually putting you in the building so you can walk around, you can open the doors, you can lift weights, and using what's called room scale technology. So, excuse me, it's tracking your movement. So if I'm moving in the real world, it's tracking me inside the game. Excuse me. So let me see if I can click this, so this will open up here. And I'll give you a quick example of what this looks like. So you're not able to hear it, but you have birds chirping in the background. You can look around with the headset on. So this is an actual recording of somebody looking around. And then we just make it fun. So again, we've got in the background, you can see the game there on the Jumbotron. You can see your hands. You can actually go up, grab the footballs. You can play football inside this VR experience. So we're actually creating the physics behind it. So you've got the programming and it feels like you're actually throwing. And you can play cornhole. So you can pick up the cornhole pads and you can play cornhole right then and there. But what's beautiful about this is you have full mobility. So I can walk on the pool, I can teleport, I can watch the game on the Jumbotron and really explore the entire property. So not only are you getting to tour it, but you're having fun doing it. So this has really revolutionized a lot of the leasing process. All right, we'll go back over here. So now we're going to talk about the different types of headsets. Now, there's the smartphone, the standalone, the PC controlled. I'm going to kick it back over to Randall, and he's going to take you through some of the different options of headsets. Randall?
Okay. Yeah, go to the, you can go, the primary, this is just a primary statement. We'll break it down a little further as we move along. But you really have two types of headsets still in existence today. I predict in the next 6 months to a year, you'll have one, and that'll be the wireless headsets. There on the wireless headsets, you have two sides. You have the smartphone powered, and that's just simply nothing more than putting a smartphone inside of it. Great for 360, for viewing 360 videos. Doesn't do anything else. So I think the standalones are really going to be the market winner, and the price points are at the level now where anybody can afford one. So go ahead and move to the next slide. I'll start explaining on each one there quickly there, Rami. The Oculus Quest 2. Oculus has been the leader in the marketplace since day one. They pretty much invented the technology in the very beginning. I first met with them in 2004, I believe, when they were still in the early days of development. They've since been sold to Facebook, and Facebook has put millions of dollars in the development of this with games and apps. And in particular, they're looking at this as not a game anymore. They're looking at this as a social experience, a training experience, a way to do meetings differently. So it's changing the ground quite a bit, and Facebook's making the investment to do that. So move on to the next slide. We'll go over a little detail of how the Facebook one works. The Facebook one is, like I said, fairly inexpensive. It starts at $299. For a mere $100 more, you can get 256 gigabytes of storage, which is pretty significant for this. They're very easy to set up, takes minutes, tracks your hands and your fingers. So as you're opening and closing your hands, it will identify that within the system itself. Just simply by reading where your hand is at in proximity to the hand grips. Has 3D cinematic sound. When we refer to 3D cinematic sound, we mean that you can hear behind, above, around. You can hear in all directions. You can tell where the sound is coming from, and you can cast it directly to a compatible TV or the Oculus app, which is on your computer. So there's a number of different ways that you can play this, and it says on this one, it supports 1,000 apps. There's actually more than that now because there's been a lot of other people that have jumped in on the Oculus bandwagon. So they're selling quite a bit. So next slide. The Cosmo Elite, it's a fairly new device. HTC has been around for quite some time. Their biggest competitor, which was Lenovo, has now partnered with them. And so Lenovo has ditched their headsets, partnered with Vive, and now they're simply selling the Vive headset. It greatly impacted the market, and we're seeing a lot more Vives, but we've also seen a pretty good impact on the price point too. So if you move to the next one, we'll see the price point's a little bit higher on the Vive. But it does have some features that are somewhat of an advantage. It uses a wireless adapter. They were the first to have the wireless adapter. It goes in multiple directions, meaning that if I'm swinging a racquetball racket, my hand's behind me, it will read that. If you're playing with two people in the same room, it will help identify the other person who's playing at the same time. So it has some nice features to it. It switches back and forth very freely from being able to see out the front. So if somebody calls on the phone, kids are having whatever, you don't have to take the headset off. It'll just turn on a camera and you can see what's in the room. But that's also a huge advantage because now I can switch back and forth between AR and VR using the same device. And so now we're seeing that kind of starting to emerge where you're seeing the same applications appearing on the same, different applications appearing on the same devices. Again, it has great sound. This one has really high resolution. When we refer to resolution on VR, AR, we're referring to usually resolution for each eye. So when something says it's 4K, That actually has to be 8K to be able to render that, because you're rendering 4K per eye, because they're two different screens, and they're actually technically seeing two different things, just like your eyes would see in real life. So we'll move on to the next one. I'll get to the HoloLens. The HoloLens has been around in commercial applications for quite some time. It's slowly starting to make its way out of that realm. But as we saw from the video earlier with them setting up that room, the HoloLens is really the professional series of AR headsets. And we can click on this video and show you their quick video on the HoloLens too. Now, what's interesting about the HoloLens is a self-inclusive, all-inclusive device. It will read everything in the room. It will read the distance of the walls, the distance of the floors. It will tell what objects are in the room. Using its AI, because it's connected to the Azure AI, it can identify what those objects are and will help you make analysis of those objects. Let's say, for instance, you're you're in a tank command working out in the middle of the desert. Your tank breaks down and you have to fix it. Those technicians, the people that work on those tanks generally aren't engineers or technicians, but using the HoloLens, as the government has been doing, they could technically look at that vehicle, they can see where the problems are, they can diagnose it in the field, and then it will walk them through step by step of how to fix that problem, identifying what they're doing with their hands, where their body position is, where their head position is, and it does that all through one device. So for, like I said, for large scale commercial applications, but then again, the World of Tanks Museum in the UK uses it for demonstrating and showing tanks that no longer exist. They've been destroyed in battle, and there's none available left to show. They've actually built tanks, replicas of those tanks, so viewers can come in and actually take a look at them. It's a fairly expensive device, so it's $4,500, but most people who are using it are demanding that kind of quality of work. There's also the Vive 3, which is about to come out, or actually just came out. The Vive, it's a little bit better even than the current Vive that's out there. It's going to be great for remote collaboration. It's designed so it can be used by multiple users. And then the Valve Index is a fairly new device that's on the market, got phenomenal screen resolution, and it's designed to be used with the wireless 5G networks.
Awesome. Thank you, Randall.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that. Can you flip the go back here? Now I'm going to play in closing this video here that it's very popular, and I'll show you kind of a glimpse into what the future may look like. So give me just a second.
Fantastic. Great. Nice. Great.
Vas tarde. Apúrate si quieres una buena calificación.
Voy lo más rápido que puedo.
¿Has pensado en correr? Es saludable y eficiente.
Seguro que no hay más trabajos disponibles. Yo estudié para ser profesora y estoy haciendo mercados.
Y además puedes quedarte con los puntos de fidelización. Eres una monje afortunada. Tienes que confiar en la aplicación. ¿Te sientes inspirada? Gracias. Chao.
¿Quién soy yo? No, eso no es lo que quiero decir. ¿Para dónde voy? No. Puedo volver a empezar. Olvídalo.
Estoy presente ahora. Me amo. Estoy libre de mi ira. Estoy libre de mi tristeza. El amor es mi
Habla español.
Adiós.
Hola, yo soy María.
Pretty crazy stuff. What I would say is it's not that crazy. If you go back to The Singularity by Ray Kurzweil, he talks about a fully immersive world where all these things are happening at you at once, or coming at you at once. He talks about how we're going to go from virtual reality to a complete neural link where we're going to be able to upload, have all our information in the collective and be able to go into virtual worlds just by a push of a button or by consciously going into that virtual world. What we're seeing right now, and I've spent some time in San Francisco pre-COVID, and we've been talking, meeting with other companies, big companies like Samsung, and seeing what they're doing. And we're seeing glasses coming out they've been working on that look like sunglasses, that look like reading glasses. We're going to see contacts next. So the big headsets are going to get smaller and smaller. And pretty soon it's going to just be a neural link in your head and you can go into a full virtual world. And you can see here how chaotic it could be with advertisement and all this stuff popping in at you. We like to nerd out on this stuff. And so I would suggest if you like this, definitely watch Black Mirror. It's a great show on Netflix. It'll take you down the rabbit hole into maybe the darker side of some of these things and how wild and crazy it can go. Also, Peter Diamandis has a really great newsletter. It's called Future Loop. And he's constantly putting out content on all the new stuff that's coming down the pipeline. And those are some ways that we stay ahead of the game is through some of those newsletters, and then just being able to create content. We have awesome customers that come to us with crazy ideas. And that's how we have grown into this industry and continue to stay on the cutting edge. So that's what we have today. Hope you enjoyed that. And I will open up for questions.
Yeah, I had one question come in, Rami from Chris M asking me to revisit what I said about the 4K, 8K. So let me just kind of go over that real quick.
No problem. Yeah. And Anna, do you moderate this or we just go to the chat and
go ahead, Randall. Okay. You can do that. And then Taylor
well, how that works, Chris, is actually when we refer to the 8K versus 4K, we're referring to the actual size of the file itself. So and the file itself actually has to play out as a larger size file, because when the video is playing, what it actually is actually two videos playing on the same screen at the same time. And it's technically one video, but you're seeing it from each side. So in order to render it properly, I have to literally double the size of that file. That's what most systems are designed now to do on these VR devices. So what I'm actually playing back, if I want to see a 4K quality stream, what I'm actually playing back is an 8K quality file. And so that is so I can enable each side of each eye, and then that single video gets split into two videos and then projected to each eye. So that's how VR systems work, is you're actually viewing two 4K videos concurrently, and the file size and the file format has to be 8K to do that. Does that
and
make
I'll
sense?
Just piggyback on that. When we started working with GoPro and creating content, the first camera was 4K. So really what we were getting was really closer to HD left eye, right eye, and it wasn't great. Now I'll tell you, we're shooting 8K to 11K because at worst we're getting 4K left eye, right eye. So we're getting a much higher resolution. So we have to shoot those higher frame rates. We're actually shooting a 360 3D, so you're getting that depth, which creates a lot more work in post, but it's a much better picture. Randall's point. So great question.
Thank you both very much.
No problem.
Excellent. We have a few other questions that we're going to ask, but before I go into the questions, you're going to see on your screen a poll pop up. If you can take a moment and just participate in the poll, there's about 4 questions on there. You need to submit the answers to all 4 questions, and then you can press submit. And that will go into additional questions that came through. So one question that came in the very beginning of the presentation was, is there a preferred headset that you would recommend? You went through quite a few, but if someone wanted to get the one that you would recommend, which one would it be?
I'll open that and then I'll kick it to Randall. I would say it really just depends. It depends on what you're doing. So we have some customers that I'm working on a kind of a secretive project. I can't explain what it is, but think of like something that you would see in a museum, and I'm going to take you on a journey, but I'm going to control that journey. So you can't go in and manipulate where you go. So you're kind of along for a ride. I kind of liken it to Disneyland. It's a guided tour. So in that case, the Oculus Quest 2 is great. It's perfect for that. They do have the ability to click and jump around, but for those experiences, those are wonderful. For those that, like we're doing in a 3D CGI experience, like I showed you with the pool and be able to walk around, the Vive is much better for that. The Vive is built for those experiences because you need a PC gaming computer to run that system. That's the kind of graphics card you need to run something that powerful, so you can actually walk around in that room scale experience, open doors, throw things like that. So again, it depends. Now, customers say, hey, I need to have this. I want to have something to mail out to people. The Quest 2 is great. If you want to have a less expensive option, I tell them having a link or developing an app, something you can send out through SMS, that's another option. So it depends on the distribution and the application that you're creating, if that makes sense.
Excellent. You spoke on budget, depending on your budget. So can you give, obviously there's a wide range, but if you can give someone an idea of what would be a, starting investment to create, a virtual reality tour of their apartments or,
Sure.
anything that as a starting ballpark.
Yeah, so on the very low end, Matterport creates a very inexpensive camera that we've seen out in the real estate world. I think you can pick up that camera for, I believe, like $2,000, and you're off to the races. You have to basically subscribe to their cloud platform, which is kind of where they get you. It's a monthly subscription. So the more tours that you create, the more you have to spend on the subscription. So that's I would say, the low end kind of entry level to 360. Immersive panoramic. And then if you up from there, we've developed experiences up in the 6 figures that are much more immersive. So it really it runs the gamut, and there's just a large range between those two. So.
Excellent. You gave quite a few examples of different industries, from real estate to education. Are there other particular industries where, it's especially good to use and they perhaps could be even considered behind the curve if they are not using or starting to explore using virtual reality?
Yeah. I always say it, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should, right? Because when it first came out, everyone's like, oh, I need to do virtual reality. And we would have these conversations with customers and say, well, do you really need it? But let's look at your business plan. Let's look at what you're trying to do. If it's, I want to take someone away, I want to immerse them and put them in this experience. And the NXP was a great example. It's something they'd never done before. They had this really new technology they wanted to show off. And so we found a really creative way to show that off in a way that other people weren't doing. So it's a great way to make you stand out from the competition, but it has to be done right. If you're on a smaller budget, I tell people, hey, let's do a 360 experience versus a full virtual reality experience. I talked to somebody the other day who creates these really cool design elements for housing, and they actually spent a lot of money sending out these very large scale, like bathrooms, bathtub mock-ups. We said, hey, why don't we create something that's in VR? You can send out the headset, you can put it on, and you can show them in VR, all CGI, what your bathrooms are going to look like when they're created. So you're talking saving hundreds of thousands of dollars in travel and shipping, and having to do these things in person, that we can now eliminate that cost significantly. So there's a lot of ways that we can think outside the box to apply VR.
And so speaking of applying the VR, in which area are you seeing it more used? In the practical reasons of training, or perhaps having meetings, or more for selling, creating a video to show off, how magical your tea is?
Well, no, that's a great question. So I would say when it first came out, it was gaming, right? It was like, let's go hard into gaming. And we saw real estate was really the next one. That's the one that we jumped in ahead of the curve. We were actually creating virtual design centers. You could design your home in VR. And then from there, it's really, like I said, spawned into, we've seen now, the healthcare field, the medical field, now education. And, it really kind of grown from there. So there's the experiential fun experiences, like you said, the T, which are just kind of fun little marketing pushes. And then there's the application of, like with ASU, saying, hey, you're going to take a complete course now in VR versus having to do it in the classroom. So that's also a big space. And then events. We created a full virtual reality experience for ASU Thunderbird. And they were when they were creating the new building, they were showing that to people in other countries to say, here is the new building. And you could actually see your name on the door. We could change it out for different donors. But then we put the dean inside the building and we did graduation inside this virtual building. And none of it was real. We had holograms, we had robots getting their diplomas. But because of COVID, they couldn't do any of this in person. So we did it all in this virtual world where people could still graduate with holograms and everything else. So that was a really fun and cool application that we've seen for, events that have really taken off with COVID.
Wonderful. And, there's all these statistics about how you shouldn't be looking at even just your computer screen for too long. Are there any studies on how, perhaps having a screen right in front of your face might be affecting your eye health?
That's a great question. I saw one on YouTube actually decide he was going to live in VR for a week just to see, I think, if he could do it. And he did it for a whole week. And they asked him, what was the hardest thing that you had to endure? He said, just not getting fresh air, being inside this thing for a week. So you'd be surprised. I found the younger generations seem to have a longer appetite for it. My kids can sit on this all day long. We have a roller coaster experience. My 2-year-old could do it over and over again. And I actually get a little bit of a vertigo, and which I don't normally do. So I've seen it definitely with the older generation. The time span is a lot shorter, but with the younger generations, it really, they could be in there for quite a long time. For hours and hours. Brandon, if you wanted to add anything, but I've seen kind of that.
I noticed in the very beginning of this, I started this 15 years ago in this business. And I noticed in the very beginning of it, we were in there for 20 hours a day developing. And we were actually doing collaborative development. So I'd be working with other people in the same scene at the same time. That is a pretty amazing experience when you're actually doing things in a non-destructive format where you can build and create together inside of a 3D environment and collaborate on everything going on. And this was working with some IBM on some stuff early on into this whole space. We found, at least I found, most others had similar experiences, that once we took the headsets off, went outside, it was very disorienting. And the reason being is your eyes have to focus in a slightly different way. Your eyes right now are focusing 3D that far away, but your eyes actually work with a depth camera, basically. So they have depth to them. So going outside, it would take 15 to 30 minutes when I would leave and go outside to be able to kind of focus and orient myself again. But that was only the beginning. And that only happened for about the first year I was working on this stuff. Now there's the transitions instant. So as soon as I take them off, walk outside, I can see fine. So I think your brain just has to gear and change a little bit toward that.
Excellent. That was all the questions that I had come in. If anyone wants to put themselves off of mute and ask any additional questions, please feel free to do that at this time. We still have a couple of minutes left.
Yes. But thank you, Rami and Randall. It seems like training, especially some kind of physical training, makes a lot of sense. I know the trucking industry, again, during COVID, like Randall was saying, all the adjustments that you had to make, trucking was an essential industry and they need more truckers, and the trucking schools were closed. And this is kind of a great way to do it. But if you didn't have it already set up, you kind of were already behind the curve.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we saw this. We work with a pretty large school that oversees, some of the biggest welding and HVAC programs. And so they rushed really quickly to get a lot of their program in the cloud. So we're still helping them, been doing that. And they actually created a full welding program that's in VR as well. So you could still weld in VR, you could take the classes online. And it was just, as soon as COVID happened, it was like, oh shoot, we've been talking, and we were actually talking about this before COVID. And then when it happened, it was like a mad scramble to figure out how they could keep their program running with COVID happening. So that was a big thing for us, was jumping in and helping them with that program. But you know, if you weren't already doing it, like Anna said, there was a lot, you had to catch up quickly to get in the game. So not easy.
And we're seeing it particularly in two areas where there's significant safety risk that are growing quite a bit. Da Vinci Medical, I'm not sure you're familiar with Da Vinci Medical. They sell these $1.5 million remote devices that you can do surgery with. They're surgery devices, and they start at $1.5 million and go up. They're very expensive. Da Vinci has engaged in this quite a bit with the previous company I was working with. They actually are developing all the AR systems for Da Vinci so that they can go through, and you can actually go through an entire medical procedure using this without a live patient being there. And that's been a very interesting experience. But in particular, the military, fire and safety, police departments, things where there's an inherent risk if something goes wrong in the field when you're training, even fire departments, when they're training inside those big buildings they set on fire, the concrete ones you may have seen, there's a huge risk involved there. So this avoids that risk and takes people out of that danger zone and enables them to be able to see and work properly mechanics through before they actually get into a scene where it's dangerous.
The New York Police Department did a active shooter scenarios. They actually have a warehouse where they have sensors in the ceiling, and they can do active shooter training inside this warehouse in virtual reality. So a friend of mine owns Octane Raceway. If any of you have been there, they have a really cool virtual reality setup where you can shoot zombies and things like that. And you've got the guns and the headset, very similar, but they're using that for actual training, and they can do a safe environment. They can do multiple trainings, very much less expensive in a day, and it's just streamlined the whole process. So to Randall's point, you know, we're seeing that being used in a lot of different areas for safety too. So those are great questions.
Great, thank you. Rami, again, we thank you for joining us, and we thank you again for all the support that you always give us. Randall, it was a pleasure to have you join us. Rami did tell us that you were going to be helping out with this presentation. So thank you both.
And Anna, Randall, if you didn't know, I met Randall from when I presented a couple of years ago. He was in the audience, and so that's how we met up, so, through the AMA. So
very excellent. Yeah, I like to hear that. Excellent. So thank you. And we really appreciate everybody joining us today and taking the time during, you know, lunch hour. We want to remind everyone that Spectrum Awards are coming up soon, July 21st. We are doing virtual this year, so please join us, and it is free this year, so definitely join us. We'd love to see you. And then our next event is July 28th, Wednesday, again, a lunchtime event with Greg Kilstrom, who is the principal at the Agile World, and he's going to be talking about customer experience. So return on experience, measuring the ROI of customer experience. And again, this has become a very big thing, especially during COVID times. And it's a priority in 2021. So we hope to see you there. And just stay tuned on our website, amaphoenix.org, because it will be posted soon. But otherwise, everyone, thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day, and hope to see you at the next event. And thanks, Rami. Thanks, Randall. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.